Alrighty guys, I'm Casey and welcome to a brand new episode of Into the Farlands. Last episode, it was a couple of weeks ago for me, so I'm not sure what we thought about. I do apologize for not remembering. This episode, I want to talk about writing. I want to talk about why I write. Because if you don't know, I like to write and I like to create stories. I'm going to need to get rid of something here. I don't really need the sandstone, nor do I need the sand, nor do I need this much dirt, this much cobble. We just get rid of all of that, so let's make ourselves one more bed. Oops. Yep, there we go, cool. Let's put our compass on our hotbar. So yeah, welcome to a brand new episode of Into the Farlands. And if you don't know what the Farlands are a piece of janky terrain that generates several million blocks out in the world. The only way to reach it is to walk it. That's what we're going to do it here. And since that is relatively boring, there's very little to do when walking there. I decided to use this as a vlogging series, as a way to talk about things that are bothering me, things that are on my mind, or maybe just to share stories about my past with you. Just something to communicate more with the viewer and pretty much make the journey a little bit more bearable. So we've talked about a lot of things, but this episode I want to talk about writing, why I write and why I'm creative. So I love being creative. I feel truly satisfied and truly content with life whenever I'm doing something creative. I love creating the worlds in which I write in. I love creating games, but I'm not very good at programming, so I rely on the easy engine of RPG Maker. But I haven't finished the game because I don't know, I feel more aligned with writing. I don't know what it is about writing that really truly makes me feel like it's the true source of being creative, I don't know if it's the words, I don't know if it's the fact that it's one of the oldest forms of expressing yourself. I don't know really what it is that draws me to writing as opposed to other forms of being creative. But I remember I started writing when I was in college. When I was in school, I started writing when I was I'd be about, I don't know, 11 when my teacher, Miss Newman, gave us an assignment to write something for English. And I started writing and I just fell in love. The trouble was, when I was in school, my English department was really messed up. And I've talked about this before. But it was really badly messed up. And then, anyway, I ended up leaving school being unable to really read or write. So I couldn't really truly indulge in writing because I didn't know how to really write. And I knew that you put a capital letter at the beginning of place names and stuff like that, but I didn't really know what to do with full stops. I didn't know what to do with commas. I didn't know how to spell half the words that I wrote. I didn't know really anything. But I used to write these stories. I used to try my best. They always used to be horror stories. They were always supernatural themed stories. They were always about a haunting. There was some stuff like that. That's what I truly like writing. That's where my passion in writing started. But then I invited a friend of mine over to stay, my oldest friend. So I invited my oldest friend, who I'd been friends with since school, and I was attending college with. I invited him over to stay for a couple of days. And he read me a couple of the stories that he's been writing. He wrote in the in like war fantasy genre, stuff like Game of Thrones. And I never wrote in that genre, but I found it intriguing. I found it interesting, and I decided that I was going to write something like that. I'd always had this idea of this dragon taming, axe wielding guy, and I decided to run with that. But in the end, I ultimately decided I wasn't going to do that. And we sat down and we decided on an idea that we were going to write together. When I say together, now we don't write the same story together. You know, we don't both work on the exact same story. And I don't think we ever will. We both have very different views of how writing should be. But I'll get into that in a little bit. But anyway, we often come up with an idea or a concept together. You know, sometimes this is just merely a challenge. You know, we did a challenge recently where oh, my computer's having a bit of a hissy fit. We had a challenge recently where we looked out of a window and we had to write 500 words about what we saw. And it wasn't us looking out the window, it was any character we chose. But anyway, we got together and we came up with this concept of a great war. There was a great war that would literally unite the world, that would change the face of the world. And we had to create a fantasy world, and the race that we created would be immune to like old age, really. I mean, they would age, but they would essentially not die, you know, from old age. It would be a very fantasy driven race, very just based on like on fantasy pretty much. And he created his race, I created mine. We ran with this idea. I wrote somewhere in the region of 60,000 words. He wrote somewhere in the region of, I think it was 54,000 words. But anyway, the writing that story, he had really good English, you know. He was, thankfully, he was at a time before the English got really screwed up when we went to school. And his dad writes, and he'd always wrote ever since he was a kid as well, a lot more passionately than I did as a kid. So he was really good with spelling, he was really good. And, well, I wanted to be better than him. He couldn't be the better writer. I needed to be the better writer. And don't take that as me being arrogant, like, oh, I've got to be the best. It's all about pushing myself to be the best. So I knew that if I was to be better than him, I needed to learn how to write properly. So I did. I took time learning. I'm still not 100% brilliant with my spelling. There's a couple of spelling mistakes I make here and there. But I think everyone's going to make a couple of spelling mistakes here and there. But for the most part, I'm good. I'm very good with my grammar. You know. And I got better because he was better than me. And I wanted to get better, you know. At the moment that I did get better than him, the moment that my writing started outshining his writing, is the moment he stood up and was like, nah, I'm not having this. I've got to be the better one. And he ended up, wow, that is like super loud. And he was like, nope, I can't have that. I've got to be the better one. And then he got better than me. And we've been doing that back and forth for years. Just trying to get better than one another, getting better than one another. And then just taking ourselves to new heights. And I do truly mean new heights. And I talked about this before about why I'm competitive. You know, I like competing with people because it helps push you both to become better. We've never ever once gotten better than each other by pulling each other down. And I feel like I talked about writing. Is that what I talked about in the last episode? I felt like that's what I talked about in the last episode. I feel like I've had this conversation before. Although sometimes I do sit here and I ramble to myself to see how something flows off the tongue. And if it flows, you know, because... Oh, no, I didn't want to do that. But anyway, I'm not going to go too much into that because I felt like I've talked about that a bit before. Maybe I talked about why I was competitive. I apologise if I have talked about things before. It's just hard to keep track sometimes. Anyway. So... I bring this up and I want to talk about this mainly about why I write, because recently I gotten into this funk where I'm not sure what I want to write. I've got all of these ideas. That was loud. I got all of these ideas and I never know which one I want to do first. You know, it's really difficult. And you know, I write because it's a creative freedom. And anyway, me and him, we ended up writing a lot of stories. We did one with the idea that we were going to introduce mages into into Britannia. We was going to Latinize everything. So Britain was Britannia, London was either Londonia or Londinius, you know. And just try and have an idea that there was a portal. The idea behind that world was there was a portal to a different realm, a portal to a different world. And not so much a different world, but more of a hell, of a demonic world, if you know what I mean. Not a hell as in hell, but just our own version of it, if you will. And then recently we came up with the idea that we were going to write a first-person, 50,000 word story. That was our goal. And we started this, and I have changed my mind. And this is what I love about writing. So I had this idea that not changed my mind on what we're doing, by the way. I'm still doing that. But I decided to go a little bit of a different way than what I had gone before. I don't actually have a boat, do I? So let's talk about the story concept. The idea behind the story, my story anyway, is the amulet of immortality. It's about a guy who is immortal because of, I guess, an amulet. But there's more to it than that. There's a lot more to it than just this simple amulet that's keeping him immortal. There's so much more to it. But anyway, at the beginning of the story, it's a dystopian future. So it's 300 years after World War III, if you want to say that. And basically, after World War III, it left the cities in pools of radiation. But obviously the main character is immortal, so he can walk in that radiation. But he does die. If you've ever seen Doctor Who, he's kind of immortal in the same sense that Jack is immortal. That he will die, but then he'll come back to life. But anyway, the story starts off with him walking through America. Now, I normally set my stories in England, so I decided to set this one in America for just a change of scenery, you know. You know, I do set a lot of my paranormal haunting stories in America because, to be honest, I just think it fits more better. But this one was the first one like this I'd set in America. And anyway, he's walking through it. He comes across a gas station. And when he's at this gas station, he comes across 3 bad guys. Now, I'm not going to reveal too much because I don't want to actually reveal too much. But essentially, these are bad guys. They do have names, but since I've created the names myself and they're not copyrighted yet, I'm not going to reveal the names. Not the names of the characters, but the names of sort of like what the characters are called, if you will. The bad guys are called. But anyway, main character kills one of them. Then he's killed. He's killed by one of them. And after this, they took his body back with them to their camp, and that's how the main character ended up at their camp. But I read it to a couple of people, and they brought up the idea that it didn't make sense for him to be taken there. Why would they take him back if he's dead? Now, when I originally wrote that chapter, in my head was the idea that he falls into a sleep when he's killed. But later I decided to have it where he was just completely dead. So people would think he was dead when they killed him, and he'd be able to get along his life. So originally that made sense because he would have still been breathing, and they would have been like, oh, hang on a minute, this guy's still breathing even though I've just put a bullet in his head. There's got to be more than this. But when I changed that idea about it, that he was like stone dead when he was killed, it didn't make sense. And a couple of people pointed that out to me, and I was like, you know what, that doesn't make sense. So I knew that the main character runs into another group after this. So I decided to move that bit forward. So basically, I've had to insert a new chapter 2. And unfortunately, I wasn't able to get everything sort of done in chapter 2. And so now I'm into chapter 3. And I've still got to tie in the rest of the story. There are some changes, obviously, I need to make. The whole first half of the original chapter 2, which will probably be chapter 4 now, needs to go because that's all about him waking up and realizing where he is. I need to rework that as him arriving there, because the way that he ends up with this group now is that they took his satchel. His satchel is the only thing that he's got of a home, if you will. It's got all of the stuff in that he keeps and treasures. And so he wants that back. He's also been asked by this other group that he met to retrieve something. And if he does that, then he will be granted asylum with them, meaning that he has, roof over his head, warm food, a shower, stuff like that. Stuff that's really alien to this character. He's never been part of a community out there. He's never been part of a large group, He's been part of smaller groups, but he's from England. He's travelled across the world, never really settling down. And this is set 300 years after today's years, so he doesn't know what a shower is. He doesn't know this stuff. So he decides to accept this. And so he's going to get with our group net, the original group of the 3 guys. And I just need to fix that back in. I also want to change stuff where he meets the first of the true enemy, if you will. So the enemy and the bad guy, 2 different people. You got the allies, the enemy, and the bad guys. The enemy is something that's created by the radiation. It's an idea that I've had for years. These creatures that radiation would create. The thing is, this radiation, it's not radiation. It's something else. You see, this isn't just your normal dystopian future with creatures or zombies or whatever the hell you want to call them. Because these aren't zombies. These aren't anything to do like that, or aliens or anything like that. There's something else. Because this whole idea of this story, and this is hinted at from the very beginning, very strongly, is a parallel world. So think Stranger Things. You got the Upside Down. You got something strange happening here too. And that's kind of like what I'm going with. Now, his story, and remember, the rules were 50,000 words, 50,000 words, and it had to be written first person. There were only rules on this challenge, on this story. And we did that. And we're doing that, should I say. And he decided to write a superhero story, which is really out of the realm for him. It's not something that he writes very often. If at all, I don't think he's ever written anything like that. And I'm not going to reveal names or characters or anything like that. But we decided that at some point during the stories, my guy, in my story, he's running after the bad guys, or he's trying to find someone. He runs through a bookstore, picks up a copy of my mate's book. And then in my mate's book, the superhero story, while his main character is shopping for his superhero outfit and stuff, he picks up a copy of my book. It's like a little Easter egg to each other. And I do love doing Easter eggs like that. And there's also another one where both characters from my story and his story pick up a copy of a game by the third friend of ours. We usually come together, the 3 of us. We're like the 3 amigos, although we've added a new one to the party recently. Like I said, actually I don't think I've said that, but my mate's in a relationship now, so we get another one. Really nice, chill dude he's with. So, but yeah, anyway. Come on, let me sleep. Please, game. I just want to sleep. But yeah, when it comes to writing, me and my friend, we have 2 completely different approaches. You see, I very much like playing the underdog card. I always like the odds to be stacked against the main character. And I think that for the most of the story, for the vast majority of the words are difficult. I tell you, this new mouthwash, it's really strong, and my tongue has been just so dry since I started using it. Makes it difficult. Or it might just be that it's 1,000,001 degrees in the UK right now, and I might just be dehydrated, so we'll see. Anyway, I very much believe that the main character of a story should be beaten down as much as possible and have certain sporadic moments of heroism. That made it, when I said that, that sounded like I was saying heroin. Great words. Anyway, I think that he should only get the upper hand a couple of times over the course of the story, and that the bad guy, the villain of the story, should always be the one that is overpowered, always be the guy that is strong, and should always be the guy that's right up until the end winning. And then at the end, losers. Now, if I was going to have the villain win at the end, I would probably build up the main characters being super strong. That could be an interesting story. Now I'm thinking about it, because that'd be a blow to the main character's ego. Especially if I was to create like an anti-hero. I like that concept. But anyway, my friend is very much on the other foot about that. He very much believes that people want to see the hero of the story kick rear end, kick some booty. Slay some bad guys, And it's one of those things where I believe it is personal preference. I don't think that I am right and wrong, and I don't think that he is right or wrong. I think at the end of the day, it literally really is just preference on what you prefer. Because when I was a kid, I really did love Dragon Ball Z. The trouble was, after Frieza, when it got to the androids, it got to Cell, I knew that Yamcha, Krillin, Tien, none of them would really be anything, even Piccolo. They didn't stand a chance because the Saiyans were this uber powerful race. They were always going to be the best race, and nothing was really going to outdo them apart from the bad guys. Yes, Majin Buu did, but did Piccolo stand a chance against Buu? No, he didn't. It was all Goku and Vegeta and, the kids. And I just remember that I thought the storyline was very interesting. I really loved Majin Buu. I really loved the idea of Saiyans. But I liked Piccolo, and he was kind of redundant. And I just couldn't help but think that this was taking away so much from so many of the characters. So I made a decision. That in my world, because it's one multiverse like the MC universe is. This is one multiverse like that. And I decided that I was going to never have a superior race. Now, there may be superior races on certain worlds, like I said. The original world my friend and I wrote, where we had to create a fantasy world about a great war, that world has a race that are more than human. And there are humans on that world. But as equally powerful as that race is, there are other races that are equally as powerful, if not more powerful. I make sure that each race has strengths and weaknesses, and that they aren't some like god complex. I don't want that to happen. I mean the creator gods, because I have a god of pretty much everything. There's a god of love, god of hate, god of creation, god of destruction. Some of them are goddesses. I've not really created them. I just know that they exist. But I'm never ever going to bring them into a story as an actual character. Maybe in a vision they'll answer a prayer one day. But I don't really want to bring like an uber powerful race into it. And I don't think that should be done. My friend, on the other hand, thinks that should be done. He thinks that that's a good idea. And again, it's just personal preference. It's what you like, I was married for 6 years, with the same woman for 10. And You know, we used to watch films. I used to choose the horror films. She used to hate the horror films. She used to choose the action films, you know. I'd choose Annabelle or The Conjuring or something like that. She'd pick Fast and Furious. And it's just personal preference. And it's the same with when you're writing. And I say this because it's so easy to get bogged down by what others are doing when you write. Like, oh, this is crap. And that's my biggest thing. I end up thinking what I've wrote is crap. You know. And anyway, it's so easy to get bogged down. It's so easy to get caught up in, oh, I didn't do this, or I didn't do that, or they did this, or they did that. You know? Oh, I didn't use enough emotion. I didn't do this, I didn't do that. And I did that for years. I got bogged down by all of that. And bottom line is, there's no right or wrong way to write. There's just the one way. Write for an audience of one. Write for yourself. Because when you decide to write a story, it's a huge time investment. You know, you could spend, I mean, if you're very organized, you could probably get it done in a couple of months. But chances are you're going to be spending about a year writing that story. And, you know, even my friend and I have said that when we finish this story, we're not publishing it straight away. We're going to finish the first draft, right? Once the first draft is done, we're going to move on to a new story. Then when the first draft of that story is done, we're going to come back to this story. And we're going to go ahead and we're going to finish it off then. You know, go through it, spell check it, make sure that we get over what we want to get over. You know, you will want to change some scenes. You will want to have better ideas. And the idea is that once you take a break from something, you start to forget certain things about that story. And so it's quite easy for me to write something and think, oh, the reader will know that, without actually telling them, because I know it and I know it so well. But the reader doesn't know it, and I haven't explained it to the reader, you know. And when you take a break like that and you move on to something else, it's easier to pick up on those things. It's easier to see if you're getting lost in your own words. And like I said, I do really enjoy writing. I enjoy the creative freedom that it gives me. And I love playing with the reader, the reader's imagination. You can do wonders with that. But anyway, don't get bogged down. Just keep to it. And write for an audience of one. At the end of the day, if you write a story and it's absolutely crap, you've wrote a story. You know, you've completed something. You've still got something. Your next story will be better. And even if you write a story and it is golden, you know, by the time you write your next story, that story will be crap. First story you wrote will be crap. It will always be crap in comparison. If I went back and I shown you my first Minecraft build, compared to what I'm building today, or even a year ago, you know, you can see that I have progressed. I've gotten better. You know? And that's what happens when you write. You get better. You know, and maybe one day, maybe you'll reach the New York Times bestseller. I know that's one of my goals. I really would like to top that list. I honestly don't think it's a possibility. I don't think that, one, I'm that good, and two, that I really have that much free time to get that good. Plus, the stuff that I write doesn't really attract a huge audience. You know, you look at the New York Times bestsellers, the vast majority of them are murder mystery stories. And while I've always wanted to write one, I've just never had an idea, if you will. You know, I've never had a unique concept. Now, I do have an idea for a murder mystery, but it would always be told through the criminal's point of view, which takes the mystery out of the murder mystery because you know who did it. And as much as I liked Columbo, I always wished that it didn't show you who did the crime at the beginning. And, you know, I can enjoy watching Columbo from time to time, you know. If it's on, I'll watch it, you know. I've got the whole box set. but I'm yet to actually sit down and watch the entire box set. Because I can watch a couple episodes of Columbo. That's all fine and dandy. But any more? And it's like, well, you know, as nice as this is and as entertaining as Peter Falk was, it's the whole idea that I know who's done it, so it's fun watching him work it out. But if you've watched him work it out a couple of times, I want to go on and move on to something else, you know. But yeah, I think I've talked about writing now. I think I've talked about it twice, actually. So yeah, you got another one about me writing. But yeah, if you guys are interested in wanting to read some of my work, let me know, and I may share that with some of you. Little snippets, little scenes. But yeah, that's gonna do it for this episode, guys. If you enjoyed the video, please do consider leaving a like. It really helps out the channel, and I really do appreciate it. So please do leave that like and click subscribe if you want to see more from me, guys. I'm KCO, and thank you so much for watching. I'll see you in the next one. Bye bye.